What is up, goalies? Welcome back to the DIY Goalie Podcast. We have WHL goalie coach and former pro goalie Ian Gordon with us today. And he's the guy that actually got me started on my coaching career. He was the first one that took a chance on me to get going for coaching. So we're excited to have him on. How you doing today, Gordo?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So, why don't we kind of start off with just kind of a little bit of an intro to who you are and kind of a general overview of your playing career and kind of your coaching career up until this point?
Well, okay, I can start off. I grew up in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. I was born in North Battleford. My family had us. We went to Yorkton, found my way, played all my minor hockey in Yorkton growing up. Was fortunate to play with some really good players along the way, my age. And back then, I'm actually from the age. I think I'm the last age group, the 1975s, where my birth year was the last year there wasn't a Bantam draft. So,
Um,
I believe the Bantam draft started with guys born in 1976. So I went to some WHL camps as a young guy, and then I was listed by the Swift Current Broncos. Um, and they had me move to Swift when I was able to play. Well, I guess you would call it U18 now. It was midget then, so I moved. The Broncos brought me to Swift, and I played a year of midget in Swift Current, and practiced with the Broncos when it was they needed a guy or I was available to be a third guy. So as a 16-year-old, I did just kind of practice with them and played midget. The next year, I was part of three goalies start the season as 17-year-old on the WHL team in 92, 93. It took a while to sort itself out. And actually, in that time, I actually had to go play junior B for a couple of games in Saskatoon. And they made a trade, cleared the way, I guess, don't to get us down to two. And we went on. I sat on the bench a ton that year. It was 92, 93, but we won the Western Hockey League that year. Went to the Memorial Cup, but did not win the Memorial Cup. I was the backup goalie that year. And then now I was 18 years old, obviously undrafted as a 17-year-old. I barely played. 18 years old, I returned. And back then we played 72 games in the WHL, and I played 65 of 72 games as an 18-year-old, and things were good. I look back as the draft had just happened here this past weekend, and that year I was rated very high in the NHL in draft by Central Scouting, uh, and felt my agent felt at that time it'd be a slam dunk to go. Five goalies went in the first two rounds, so we kind of were prepared to go early, anywhere from the third and ongoing. And the phone call never came. Uh, so it was back to it. I went to my first NHL camp in Chicago, 1994. And actually, it was the last training camp probably ever held at Chicago Stadium. It was right
yeah.
across from the United Center. We actually would dress in the United Center, walk across the street to Chicago Stadium and skate. It was And it's actually, this is, and now if I go back in time, this is the first work stoppage I guess I would have ever seen in hockey. It was the fall of
Yeah.
1994. I mean, I knew I wasn't making the NHL team. I was a free agent camp invite, and they gave us our return tickets the day we got there. Uh,
No.
Everybody was prepared for a work stoppage. They did have a work stoppage. Um, so I went back to Swift Current and played under Todd McClellan. It was his first coaching job in the Western Hockey League. So I went back that year, and as I mentioned before, I'd played 65 games as an 18-year-old. I came back as a 19-year-old. I was splitting the net with a young goalie, very very talented goalie, probably more skills than I had at that age. And Todd was making his own path to in his coaching career. So I was traded to Saskatoon as a 19-year-old. Again, played with some fantastic players at Saskatoon. And after my season was over, The Calgary Flames needed a guy to go down to the minors and back up during the playoffs. So I went and backed up Dwayne Rollison for the playoffs of that year as a 19-year-old. I was invited back to Calgary's camp that fall. I still had the possibility to return to Saskatoon as an overage. Yeah, I came to camp as a free agent and played well enough, consistently enough that I was given my first NHL contract in the fall of 1995 with Calgary. Again, had the best seat in the house to back up Dwayne Rollison for that entire first season as a pro. Um, but that's kind of how I got started. I mean, there's a lot of layers from the fall of 1995 till 18 years later when I retired. But that would be my start and
Yeah.
kind of how it all came to be.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to unpack there. So I guess if we go kind of closer to the beginning, because I know, you know, we've gone a long ways when it comes to, the goalie development that's out there and what's offered nowadays, but we still obviously have some ways to go. But what was it like for you in terms of goalie development when it comes to what you had growing up back then?
Well, you know what? This is again a kind of a loaded story. If you search International Goaltender School, this
Yeah.
thing was started right in my hometown by the people.
Oh, okay.
They're from Yorkton. The owner of the company, the goalie school, was his name was Reg Kachanowski, and he treated my brother was a player. He was a great shooter, but he treated my brother and I like family. So from the time I was 10 years old, I was around the goalie school. Whether I was on the ice or not,
Nice.
I was picking up pucks. I was doing whatever I could. We had the old bony puck shooting machine, and someone had to make sure the pucks were dry enough so the machine didn't plug. And I would sit on two milk crates beside this bony machine, and I would fill the tubes uh, and I was around. So I did get some development. When I
Yeah.
look at the kind of development I got, and I mean, I met some of the most amazing people through this program.
That's good. Yeah.
I mean, Cam Moon is one. He's a broadcaster for the Oilers. Uh,
Yeah.
I think Mike Buzak was a Michigan State. I mean, Dale Ledun's a coach in the KI. Darren Millard is the voice of Vegas. Like
Yeah.
these people were all goalies who had all touched this program at some point in that era of the 80s. But again, like I said, you talk about ratio. Uh, there could be six goalies at a net, and like four
Yeah.
guys are on the side just getting slap shots from shooters. Like so, you'd go in and do like you'd. It was kind of like doing an exam. Go in and do your skate
Yeah.
saves, work on your pad stacks, uh, and everybody else just thought be lined up on the boards, just getting pucks pounded at you. So the evolution of the goalie school and goalie development is quite significant. Um, and that being said, this camp, I mean, if you weren't getting this in the winter time, like if you got a couple days in the summer, you thought that was going to get you right for your upcoming season.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's awesome that you were able to kind of get that though. I know I've heard a lot of stories from back then that guys just, it was pure athleticism
Oh
and
my
that's kind
God! Yeah.
of what they ran off of
Yes.
and that was it.
Yeah.
So as a 16-year-old then leaving home to play hockey, and I'm assuming you're billeting and kind of stuff like that, like how did you, I guess, deal with that transition and still be able to, go to the rink, perform like you needed to perform, and deal with that kind of new chapter in your life?
Honestly, it was very difficult. I mean, and I deal with that now as a goalie coach when I'm looking at bringing in a goalie is how attached are they to home? How far is it from home? When I was goalie coach in Seattle, you draft a kid from Manitoba. Manitoba to Seattle is a long ways away. Your
Yeah.
parents just aren't going to be able to pop in on the weekend. For me, I was really homesick. Not going to lie, and it played a part in probably my performance to start. And until you embrace the situation you're in, I don't think you can have success. And ironically, of all people, my best friend growing up is one of the equipment managers of the Edmonton Oilers, and he was my childhood friend. And he hopped in a car with my mother on a weekend and came to Swift Current to see me, and that calmed things down. And he kind of looked at it from a whole different perspective, a different lens, and said, "Oh my God, like this is so cool. You're so lucky. You guys get to do this, you get to do that." And I mean, and
Yeah.
at that point, I guess in a way, I was taking some of the, luxuries I was given through the game for granted at that time at a young age, but I didn't really see it that way. You only see yourself in a lot of situations. And I was in that spot at that time as a young guy. And after I got settled in, I mean, you realize your teammates are your family. Uh, they become your family, and they become your family for life. And that was kind of how it evolved for me. Is you learn that you're going to have to let go a little bit of what you had at home and learn to adapt to the new surroundings.
Yeah, I a couple weeks ago we had Connor Lacouve, who one of the things that I think out of all the interviews we've done so far, what he said was really stuck with me. But he said his first when he transitioned to pro and left home and all that stuff, his first job was stopping the puck, but his second job became killing time and killing time effectively. So that's one of the things that I think a lot of the younger goalies don't realize that they're going to have to deal with once they get to these levels and you know leave home and get into those new situations. So when it comes to then, you went through major junior and now you're working up to pro, and you're dealing with that transition now, taking that step up from playing against guys your own age, and now all of a sudden you're playing against guys who might be 10 years older and twice your size and all of that stuff. So how'd you deal with that transition, and what are kind of some of the things maybe that like some of the tools you use to help deal with that?
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing is everybody thinks they're a good skater. Uh, and I thought I was a great skater in the Western Hockey League.
Yeah.
When I became a pro, man alive, I knew my skating had to improve immensely to keep up at the pro level.
Yeah.
How quickly the puck moves, how hard the passes are. I mean, how hard the shots are, but it's not just straight lines, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't matter the age of a goalie nowadays with the equipment. If you're square on it and you're in position, the pace of the puck isn't the problem for some.
Yeah.
Um, but it's getting to position. And my skating needed a lot of work. We put a lot of time into it, not just the goalie specific skating. If this might sound old school, but I did the conditioning skating with the players in my goalie equipment, the healthy scratches, the extra players, and it made me a better all around skater, better on my edges, better, I mean, your forwards and backwards, and any of my agility totally improved by just putting the extra time in. Not when practice. I mean, in pro hockey is a luxury that not a lot of people see. There's no time limit, especially at home, of when you have to be off the ice. There's no Zamboni honking the horn. You can stay out there with the lights off, and I was willing to do that. Um,
Yeah.
and because of it, my skating got better, which allowed me to get to position. And then that in turn started to, improve my all around game was just the skating. The older players, and the one thing I wish I could have told myself then is the puck is the same size no matter the rink. Um, I mean, I was playing against guys that I had seen play on TV before. And
Yeah.
there wasn't Sportsnet, broadcast, but like I was watching these guys on Hockey Night in Canada as a kid, and now I'm playing against. I played against Don Beaupre in the other end, Ron Tugnut, like I John Casey, like these guys had played in Stanley Cup finals in their career. And here I am,
Yeah.
I'm at the other end, and I've got to try to find a way to give my team a chance. So a little bit, whether it's the minors or not, you can be a little bit awestruck by your opponent. And at the end of the day, I did find some consistency, and to overcome that mentally was just to get in there and do my thing, and realize it was good enough. And one thing I couldn't fall victim to was being a comparer. Like, I couldn't compare
Yeah.
myself to anybody. I mean, I tell everybody I was 6 feet when I played, and you know me, Parksy, I'm not 6 feet. Uh, so I couldn't compare myself to J.S. Jaguar. I couldn't. I had to play how Ian Gordon was going to play, and I mean, the reality of it is Ian Gordon wouldn't get an opportunity to play pro hockey today at the height I am.
Yeah. Fair enough. So kind of flipping that a little bit, then being, the backup to Dwayne Rollison. And I know that would have been early on in his career, but, did you find that there was a little bit of that with the guys you played with too, that kind of, fanboyism and anything like that with any of your teammates?
Well, you know what? The camp that got my NHL contract with, it was a huge moment for me. The CBA this was the fall of 1995, and Joe Newendike and Gary Roberts were both deemed unfit to take part in camp as far as contact. So they had their own ice every day in the middle of the day. Well, they needed a goalie. And I mean, the trainers came and asked me, like, hey, would you come out at from 12 to 1 with Joe Newendike and Gary Roberts? And I was like, for sure, I'll do it. Like, if it meant it was my fifth ice time of the day, I did not
Yeah.
care, because
Yeah.
I mean, these guys had won a Stanley Cup for the Calgary Flames. They were great players. Um, and honestly, they won't remember who I am today, but I'll never forget a minute
Yeah.
of sharing that ice with them during training camp. And I'll use this term, and I use it with the any goalie. The better the player, the safer the goalie. And I
Yeah.
think of Gary Roberts and Joe Newendike, and me being out there, and not one puck was near my head. No, I didn't take one off the collarbone. Like, these guys, they didn't want to hit me in the head. They wanted to score. Uh,
Yeah.
but they were really, really gracious with their time. They treated me great, and I went out with those guys, and it was fantastic. I mean, I enjoyed that. I mean, I played in games, a lockout, like fundraising game in Saskatchewan, 94, against Wendell Clark, Joe Sakic, like these guys on the other end. And what you do realize is, I mean, how hard they shoot. But at the end of the day, like, just the importance of being in position. Uh,
Yeah.
that, if you're off by a bit, they'll expose you. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was, you know what? I found that in the minors with guys. I mean, when I went over to Grand Rapids, and he was a young player. I'll throw a name because Oiler fans would know him. But we go to the penalty shots, and I faced Jimmy Carson. Jimmy Carson was, I'm pretty sure, part of the Gretzky trade. Uh,
Yeah.
I stopped Jimmy Carson, and the third guy in the shootout is this young whippersnapper named Sergei Samsonov. You know, who's over playing in the minors instead of playing in Russia in his draft year. And I stopped him on a in the shootout, and I didn't realize the significance of that in that time, but it probably bought me a couple of starts. Uh,
Yeah.
but and I at this point I was into I think it'd be my third year pro, and developed a little bit of that. But I mean, the minute you think, oh crap, this guy's got his puck on his stick, it's in the net. Like,
Yeah.
the minute you come out of your process, it's over. You don't have a chance.
Yeah, I think we lose that a little bit watching these guys, because I remember filling in for a Perry Perns 3-on-3 skate the one time, and Mark Letestu was there,
Yeah.
and yeah, he got a breakaway on me and just made me look absolutely silly. But you watch him on TV because he's a third, fourth line guy. It doesn't look like anything special, but man, yeah, those guys have some skill that you don't
Oh,
realize
you have
for
oh
sure.
yeah. The even
Yeah.
nobody has any understanding when you watch
Yeah.
television. You become desensitized to actually how
Yeah.
talented they really are.
Yeah, for sure. So you had pretty close to a decade of pro in North America. I think what was it, 7 or 8 years,
It was
something like
five,
that?
five
What was it, five?
full
Okay.
years. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so then you make the transition over to Germany and played quite a while there. So tell me about kind of why that transition happened and what that was like for you.
Well, it was an interesting time in hockey. It was I went in the fall of 2000. There were at that time some independent minor league teams. Um, there was an AHL and an IHL. Half the NHL farm teams were in the IHL, half were in the American League, but the IHL still had some very good destination teams with good budgets. I mean, back then there was a team in Orlando, there was a team in Vegas, there was a team in Long Beach, San Antonio, Houston, and these teams didn't belong to NHL teams. But what they did was they signed very good minor league players, um, guys that had been around a long time, kind of the guys that you would see as your depth guys for NHL teams now. These guys would rather sign independently and make more money than to belong to an NHL team, and they would still basically become a free agent. So at that time, it looked like there was going to be they were going to get it down to one league, and that was going to be the American Hockey League. And we didn't know when it was coming, but the Players Association had kind of prepared us for it. So for me, now I was 25, I'm considered a veteran, and there's only so many veteran spots on every team. The rules change year by year. Sometimes goalies don't count, sometimes they do. But back then, after 5 years, I was going to be considered a veteran. And if I didn't have a good footing with an NHL team, I thought, well, you know what? Let's give Europe a go. The money is good, the lifestyle is good, and a lot of players had gone over, and their experience was good. So I'm like, well, okay, I'll give it a try. And I went to the German league, and I mean, this was a German league back then with 15 import players per team.
Yeah.
So it was North Americans, it was Finns, Swedes, Czechs, Russians. Like this thing was wide open. It had a real good TV contract back then, and the hockey was outstanding and way better than I ever imagined I was getting myself into.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good to hear. So then do you think like how hard was it, I guess, to adjust to that lifestyle change then, being somewhere with a different language and, the different sized ice and probably a different playing style too. How is that transition
Oh
like?
man, it's so eye opening. Like this is
Yeah.
2000. I didn't have a cell phone. Uh, there was, I mean, dial up internet. Uh, no, I mean, obviously, there's no Netflix, there's no streaming, there's no nothing.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, 95% of the population in the place I was in could speak German and German only. Uh, so you had, I mean, nobody understands like until you actually get feet on the ground. Like, there's no grocery stores open on a Sunday. Everything's closed Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. Wednesdays things close at lunchtime. Like
Yeah.
you have to find a way to embrace it again, like I was saying earlier, even in the hockey situation, in the culture of the country, if you don't embrace the life outside the rink, you have zero chance of succeeding. Um, you have zero chance of succeeding on the ice, and that for me was it took some time. It really did. The food was different, and I see North. After a couple of years, I'd laugh at the North American guys come and they're like complaining that the water's always sparkling, and like, but I'm like, you know what? You'll get used to it, and
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I love. outside my first couple months, I loved all my time in Germany. It was an experience. I mean, I was able to win a championship over there. My jersey's retired in Frankfurt. Like this, I mean, my career, that point of my career was at the height of my career when I was in my early 30s, and you know what, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what do you think then? Like, did you have to change anything in your approach to your game or kind of how you played the game to be able to have that success so that kind of that outside noise wasn't there anymore?
Yeah, you know what? I think the one thing you have to remember, uh, there's a lot of extra space, but the dots are in the same spots. Like
Yeah.
your face-off dots are still in the same spot. So positionally, um, there was some familiarity, but you don't realize when a guy comes down the wing, he doesn't just have to shoot the puck because he's got more space to turn outside, look for layers. Um, so for me, um, like again, the big passes, I wasn't able to play as aggressive as I could have in North America. I still played ultra aggressive for the European game, but if anybody pulled up and I was only puck focused on an entry and didn't read the play quick enough, like how you're never going to get on an east west play.
Yeah.
So I had to read rushes better. I had to play much deeper on PKs, killing penalties. I had to play deeper and kind of keep everything in front of me. Um, but those were some technical adjustments. I restructured a lot of how I played when I was about 30. Um, I had a goalie coach from Switzerland, and we did some funky stuff, man. You guys, I'm sure social media has made a lot of stuff over there look kind of funny, but I did a bunch of stuff. Again, had to up my speed on the ice. My skating had to get better, and then I had the help of he's the goalie scout of Montreal Canadiens now, named Vincent Riendo, and I worked with him for a full season, and we tried to put some more structure in my game, and the success was not there right away. It was a fight, to be honest. To a point, he only was able to keep his job 1 year, and I think it was because of my performance. Mine was inconsistent, and they're like, we got to get that Swiss guy back in here. But
Yeah.
what management doesn't know is the combination of that year with Vinny and my Swiss goalie coach. I was able to refine my game uh,
Yeah.
to tack another 7 years onto my career.
Yeah, those transitions are tough. I kind of went through the same thing in my first year of junior A there, finally getting some structure introduced.
Now,
But so just curious, back then, you guys don't really have video like they do today.
right.
So how do you guys like kind of deal with learning to read the plays and kind of, getting that situational awareness and some of that hockey IQ that's so important for the goaltending
So
position?
what I would do, we would still like so if they would have special teams meetings. You'd still have
Yeah.
video enough. So I would sit in on the PK. So
Okay.
I mean, obviously on the big ice, you got a power play on the big ice. You got to score. Like
Yeah.
so, as a goalie, your biggest threats of this hockey game will probably be shorthanded. So that's what I would spend my time doing video on the like on the other team's power plays, because I wanted to see, because everything at the pro level is almost scripted. Um,
Yeah.
so if you could get an idea, you that way you at least would know formations and where people are or what's worked for them. If they scored one way, they're going to try it again. They're like, if they scored 2 games ago on somebody, they're gonna look for that play, whether that's to the goal line and then back door, or if they're hitting a bumper guy or a big shot guy that they always look for. You got to know where these guys are. So that's where, as I would say, my video was less technical about my game and more in the team game.
Yeah. Fair enough. So just wrapping up your playing career then, with how long you played pro, what do you think was one or a couple like keys to being able to have that longevity in your career?
Well, one is luck. Um, like
Fair enough.
I didn't have major surgeries.
Yeah.
One is that, so I won't, I mean, I am fortunate. Two, consistency. If you're consistent, you know you're not losing games for your team. That's what a coach wants.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was in good shape. Like I may
Yeah.
not be today, but I'm 49. I'm giving myself a pass. Uh,
Yeah.
but I was in good shape, good enough shape to withstand every season, and that would have played into me not getting hurt as well.
Yeah. Fair enough. So transitioning then from your playing career, now you're coming back over the pond. You're transitioning to be that the goalie coach for Seattle and kind of getting your coaching career started. What kind of led to that, and why did you want to go that route?
You know what? I think it kind of picked me. Really good friends with Keith McCambridge. He works for the Oilers farm team in Bakersfield. And that time he was a head coach for the Jets farm team. And he'd mentioned that there was an opening for development job with Winnipeg Jets. I was lucky enough to get an interview. They flew me in. I sat in the interview process. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I knew it was something I wanted to do. I was passionate about hockey, passionate about goaltending. Um, sorry. So then I didn't get the job, and but they liked my interview, and they said we're hiring the guy who worked in Seattle, uh, but we really like and think you got a future in coaching. We'd be willing to put a call into Seattle if you want us to. They gave me the contact of the GM of Seattle, and you know what I didn't even really think much about it. I called him. We had a quick conversation. I don't think we really knew where. I mean, I wasn't looking at this was going to be what I wanted to do. I
Yeah.
was happy to help kids in the summer in Edmonton, and but I didn't really look at it. So when the head coach, his name's Steve Konowalchuk, he's now the head coach of the St. Louis's farm team, and sorry, he calls me, and we hit it off. We just talked hockey, and we had a instant connection, and he wanted me to be the goalie coach in Seattle. So we worked it out. We became great coaching partners as far as me handling his goalies and him being the head coach of the team. And I was able to be his goalie coach for 4 years there until we won the championship and he moved on to Anaheim.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So talking about that championship, what's the difference for you, and maybe also kind of what's the same, but in terms of winning a championship as a player and as a coach? Because I know when you played in the dub, it was as a backup, which is a little bit different. But then when you're in Germany, there you guys won the league, and you're the guy, and then you go and win one as a coach. So kind of, I guess between those three situations, what do you find was kind of the same, and what was different?
Honestly, the biggest difference between being a coach and being a player. As a coach, there's nothing you can do. When you watch the
More
games,
stress.
yeah, you're way more nervous watching it
Yeah.
than you are like because I mean, a goalie coach, you're not even on the bench.
Yeah.
You're up in the press box,
Yeah.
and you prepare your goalies, you trust it, but at the end of the day, the physical, nothing I do, I can't physically change the outcome of the game as a goalie coach once it starts.
Yeah.
Um, so that would be the one part. As a backup, as a goalie, when everybody celebrates championship at the end, you can never you can never get that feeling any other way. As a backup, I found I was part of the team, but it wasn't the same as doing it being the guy
Yeah.
in the crease. It's just I'd be lying if I said I felt the same way.
Yeah, for sure. It's giving you the Bill Zito eyes in the press box there as the coach.
And you know what?
Yeah,
Shockingly, people, when I watch the games, I have very little emotion watching them.
yeah,
Maybe that is just because I have become not numb to it. I'm still passionate about it, but you're around people,
yeah,
and you know what? You can't do anything about it. So you got to watch the game. You got to believe in your goalie. You got to believe in the job and the preparation you've done with the goalie all year, and that in that moment they're going to be capable of getting it done.
yeah. Same approach as on the ice, control the
Yeah.
controllables, and that's about it. So you've been to two Memorial Cups then, was a one as a player and one as a coach. What's that experience like? Because I know that's kind of one of the biggest stages, and when it comes to junior hockey, that's pretty much the stage outside of maybe the World Juniors. But what's that kind of like, and what was that atmosphere like, and just being able to be a part of that?
You know what? It happens so quickly. The event,
Yeah,
you can be out of it before you even know what happened. And one, you don't get to develop the hatred for your opponent. You don't know a
yeah,
lot about them, so it's tough to prepare. And the high of going through 4 rounds of playoffs, and now you're just in this quick event. Like when we went in '93, we beat Sault Ste. Marie our first game, and it's like, oh man, we're gonna steamroll this thing. Then we play Peterborough in our next game, and there's a guy playing defense for Peterborough named Chris Pronger, and he played 45 minutes of the game, I think. And we got absolutely waxed. And it's like, okay, well, we'll beat the Quebec team. They're nothing. Lost to them. Then we had to play a play-in game against the French team, Laval again. Lost again, and that was it. You're done. Season's over. And no different. Seattle, we win in Regina. We had to fly back to Seattle, then fly all the way out to Detroit, basically to Windsor. We play uh, we played Erie the first game, and they've got DeBrincat and Strom, Fogel, Sorelli, Radish, like they're loaded,
yeah,
and we lose, and we end up playing. I think it was Windsor in our second game, and like we were done. Like
yeah,
you lose 2 games, like this event is over for you.
yeah,
And it goes quick. Like, so you got to start well in that event. I mean, in my first time as a player, we did, and then we couldn't get it back on track, and it was over before you know it. And the second time there, it was like we were so tired, and the other teams were just loaded, and before you know it, the event was over.
yeah, yeah. So as a coach, then, what's it like being able to kind of see the successes and kind of see some of the big moments that your players can go through? Like I know, what was it, 2 years ago, Matty Berlin there got his 15 seconds of fame as an e-bug for the Oilers. There he got into the last minute or so, and then even like a guy like Landon Bow there who has gotten into I think 2 or 3 NHL games, but even still, that's kind of a big moment. So what's it like as a coach being able to follow these guys after they've moved on from working with you to kind of hit those milestones?
Well, you know what? You're really proud and you're really happy for them. Like, I'll just kind of work in reverse. Like just on this past weekend, a goalie from Red Deer, Chase Wutsky, a kid I've worked with since he was 12 years old, and he's a goalie in Red Deer. He gets drafted by Minnesota. So that was, it was a big moment. Um, I mean, I drafted Thomas Milich when I worked for Seattle. So to see his success at the World Junior levels and get drafted and sign an NHL contract, um, those are big moments. I mean, Matty Berlin. I mean, I've known Matty Berlin from Edmonton, and I mean, I traded for him in Seattle when he was kind of floating around from Spokane. I knew his character. I knew him as a human being, and knew he'd be good for us. Um, and pushed for that and had them and then land and bow. But I keep in contact with all these guys still today. Um,
Yeah.
like you develop a partnership. I mean, I tell these goalies at this level, like I work for them. Like, yeah, I'll keep them accountable, but I work for them, and it's my job. If they succeed, I succeed. It's a two-way street. If they're not performing, I mean, I'll be probably the first person to take a bullet on it. So at the end of the day, you gotta develop that relationship with them, and they have to trust me, because if they've all had goalie coaches as kids. Um,
Yeah.
and there's been money exchanged and trust developed wherever they're from. So when they get to my level, they got to trust that whatever I'm telling them, whatever I'm asking them to do, is going to help them have success.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Um, so you worked with, the teams, like when it comes to Swift Current, Red Deer, all of that stuff. You worked, the camps with Ian Gordon goaltending and all of that stuff, some of the minor hockey stuff as well. But you've also done some goalie development work with Hockey Alberta. And I'm kind of wondering, like, what's different as a coach when you're approaching, you know, more of a organizational development plan as opposed to like a team specific plan where you're only working with like a couple goalies at a time.
Well, they are two different entities. I mean, when you are
Yeah.
dealing Hockey Alberta, Hockey Canada, depending on the level of goalies, because we will go anywhere from grassroots to elite stream. Um,
Yeah.
so one, especially at the young age, is what are we capable of doing when we get on the ice? You have to read that right away. So, first thing we should try to achieve is provide a safe environment for the goalie to enjoy the position, no matter the age. Um, age, ability doesn't matter if it's a grassroots program. Okay, what can we get done? First thing you can get done is probably the most important thing. We can work on skating. We can work on movement.
Yeah.
We can work on all the good goalie specific movement. And when you're doing skating, there's no results attached to it, right? There's no pucks going in the net, so there's nobody's going to feel bad. Shouldn't, as long as you approach it the right way. Everybody should learn something through that, and that's your first point of contact of development on the young goalie. Is how what's the first thing we need to do? We need to work on our movement. I mean, because you could have kids out there with ill-fitting equipment, sticks too short, or too tall. The glove that I mean, I won't name
It's a
brands.
street hockey
Yeah,
glove,
it is.
basically.
It is.
Yeah.
But you might have player skates. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, what can we do that they want to come back and be a goalie the next day? So that's the first thing I think I try to, first provide the safe environment, uh, give the energy that the kid, the child on the ice is finding a connection to the position.
Yeah. Awesome. So when you're approaching your coaching philosophy and we're going through and working on what you want to work on with the goalies, what are kind of the pillars or the foundations or your, like, what doesn't change in your approach, whether it's with the younger goalies or kind of the more elite stream goalies?
So yeah, I mean, first thing is skating. Again,
Yeah.
you have to be able to skate. You have to be able to move. You have to be able to get uh, to position. So skating and positioning, right? So I use belly button to the puck. I mean, and then,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, tracking. I mean, Parksy, you know how important tracking is. Everybody thinks they know what tracking really means, but properly watching pucks, not turning shoulders, having hands in front, chin over the ice, like all those big things. Anybody can run a goalie drill. Like
Yeah.
there's YouTube, there is every social media platform with it. Everybody can run a goalie drill. But at the end of the day, if you don't watch the puck properly, you will not be consistent at the end of the day. You won't be consistent in recoveries. You won't be consistent in, your just initial save. So I use three things, and it is skating, positioning, and tracking, and everything builds out of that. And every goalie drill almost has that component. Um, Skate to position, then watch the puck in, watch it out, and then you're on to your recovery. Uh,
Yeah.
so, if done properly, some of the simplest drills designed for goalies are the most effective ones. I look at a hockey drill, and I wish more coaches would still use it because it can be used at any level of hockey, is the high low team drill, where one player skates around the dots on one side, the other, and all it does is it requires a shot from one angle and a goalie to recover to the other angle. So he's going to have to get to position, and he's going to have to get up with the proper leg and get it to the other side to face second shot. So that's a team drill, but it's also a goalie drill. Uh,
Yeah.
but when it comes to that philosophy, I still spend a ton of my time on movement. Um, I don't like sliding on any plays above the hash marks. It drives me
Yeah.
crazy. Um,
Yeah.
to commit yourself to the ice on a play where you could get to on your feet. So at the high level, those are things I'm really those are it's a non-negotiable. Um,
Yeah.
so at the young age, we do make them do 100 slides in a row, and I I wish we wouldn't at times, um, because I would really stress them getting around on their feet the best they can. But the default is for so many young goalies is to get to their knees. Um, but at the end of the day, like those three things are they're in everything I do, whether that's grassroots or at the Western Hockey League level.
Yeah, find that interesting because I think it was Ivan Prosvetov who did a an interview with the In Goal Media guys and had mentioned that one thing he noticed when he came over from overseas over to North America is how much more complicated the approach to goalie coaching was when it came to a lot of the North American coaches he worked with, where, back home it was just we skate and we stop a puck and
Yeah.
that's about it.
I mean,
So,
at the end of the day, like you can you know how this is. You coach goalies and people that are listening. Um, like I said, anybody can do a drill, but what are your components? What is getting developed? Um, and that for me is a simpler approach to the game, means less confusion to the athlete. And
yeah,
so for me, that's the way I like to approach the position. That's the way I like to approach coaching. I'm not there to waste people's time, um, and I've never have been. You you know how I operate, Parksy. I like to get to work. I'm not a big gimmick guy. I just like to get to the foundation of goaltending and keep building from that foundation.
yeah, for sure. So, what do you think you would give as kind of, one piece of advice or, one tip to the goalies out there and kind of like something you wish you knew maybe when you were playing that now that you think would really help just, improve the game or the approach to the game or anything like that?
When it comes to a goalie, if I mean, I wish I could have. Man, I wish I had the knowledge for the position that I have
Yeah.
now when I played, because I've learned from some amazing goalie coaches
Yeah.
since I've been done playing, and I'm always looking for opportunities to become a better coach. I don't. I'll never hide that fact. I do not pretend to know everything. I am always open to find new ideas, as long as there's something behind it. Um, but the one thing is you have to have you have to embrace development and not just, I mean, we all hide behind, oh, this isn't a goalie drill, or this isn't, at the end of the day, there's still a puck and there's a player in practice or in a goalie session. I mean, I just came off the ice and I had a goalie, U15, and I had a professional hockey player on the ice. And I mean, he was very respectful as far as shooting. And I said to the goalie, I said, it's not going to matter what this player looks like. I said, but if you get belly button to the puck, you're going to have an opportunity to get hit with some pucks today. Because there'll be some people say, oh, the shooters are no good, or this is, and then they're just arguing the fact of the session. But at the end of the day, we have to track every kind of different shot, throughout our time of playing. It could be flubbers, slap shots, backhands, everything. You're going to have to be faced with a million different things. So you can't consider yourself too good for certain moments. And for me, it's like, don't just like hide behind, well, there's no goalie development, or there there are times where, I mean, I would love to change team practices. I would love to change certain components of how hockey is structured, but that's not my place to do it today. So if you're on a team, you practice hard, you try to make as many saves as you can. But at the end of the day, like, we can't just hide as a goalie community behind there's not enough goalie development in every ice time that we attend.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Gordo, thanks for coming on. It was great to have you on and kind of get your insight. Where can people find you, follow you, anything like that, if they want to learn more about you and get to know you?
Well, we'll go with the website first. Quite simple, iangordongoaltending.com. On Facebook, Ian Gordon Goaltending. And on Instagram, I think I'm Ian Gordon Goaltending as well.
Yeah,
I
I
am
believe so. Yeah.
I am not the best social media guy. Like I said, there are days where I wish I knew where my phone was uh,
Yeah.
to get up with it. But yeah, at the end of the day, the goaltending community is a lovely community. There's a lot of good people out there doing a lot of great things, and you're one of them, Parksy. So thank you for having me on it.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll put all of that up in the show notes. But yeah, we'll touch base again sometime, Gordo. We'll have to have you on in a little bit and get some more insights from you. But thanks for joining us, and we'll see goalies next week.
Stay well, Parksy.